Hello and welcome to another Carpi Life tackle video. I've not done a video for a while and I'm actually bankside doing this video, so excuse the poor quality as I'm holding my camera. I don't have my tripod and stuff with me. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about baiting. I see a lot of people asking how much bait should I take, what bait should I take, and sometimes on the Facebook forums, you get a lot of people that are obviously experts, and some of them don't answer questions too well, in my opinion. You know, they could be a bit kinder to people, and sort of just respect the fact that not everybody is a seasoned carp fisherman. So I thought I'd do a quick video about baiting. Now, baiting is a very individual thing, but I always, when I'm looking at my approach for baiting, and I'm not saying that my approach is 100% correct. There'll be people that disagree with my approach, and that's fine. They just have a different way of doing things. So what I tend to do is I look at two things. I look at the time of year, and I look at what's in the water that I'm fishing. Okay, so time of year is important because as most people will probably know if you've done a little bit of research, carp feed sort of differently throughout the year. So during the winter, they're very slow moving, and they don't eat a lot, so you don't need a huge amount of bait. In fact, the more bait you put in, generally it's counterproductive. Same as right in the middle of summer, I find, when it's at the hottest, again, the fish don't need to eat, or they just sort of sit up at the surface and they don't eat a fair bit. Now, just before they spawn and just sort of late summer, the fish are preparing to spawn and preparing to go into winter mode, so they're actually starting to eat a lot more food. So again, depending on the time of year, and again, do some research, and go onto Google and research carp feeding patterns, and you'll be able to sort of get a rough idea of when carp are feeding heavily and when they're not, and then you can take that information to your local water and try it out. Your local water might be slightly different, the times might be slightly off, but again, that's where fishing, and practice comes in. Eventually you'll get a decent baiting pattern for a particular water. So no matter what time of year it is, you need to know what's in the water. And the reason why I say this is because if you're in a water that's just got carp, then you're actually in a really good position, because it makes your choices so much easier. Whereas if you're in a water that has a lot of nuisance fish, roach, bream, and tench, for instance, then you might want to just sort of adjust your bait accordingly. Now, the very first thing I'm going to talk about, and this is, I use it for absolutely everything: sweet corn. Now, baiting doesn't have to be expensive. It can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. Sweet corn, you can buy frozen sweet corn for anywhere between 70p and £1 a kilo. So again, if you're on a water that's only got carp, use loads and loads of sweet corn, because the small fish are not going to be there hoovering it up. So you can make a fairly decent big mix of bait using 5 kilos of sweet corn, which will cost you a fiver. And then you can just add a few other bits and pieces in. Now, the other thing I use a lot of is pellet, and the mix I'm using at the moment is, this is my own mix, my Carpi Life tackle mix, the summer mix. The reason why I'm using the summer mix is the lake I'm fishing has actually got a fair few nuisance fish in, so I want the bigger pellet. I don't want the sort of 2s, 3s and 4 mil pellet, because the roach are just coming in and they, within minutes, all that pellet is gone. So I'm using my 8 14 mil mix, and that's pretty good, because the bigger roach will come in and they can eat the 8 mil pellet, but You know, they're not going to eat the 14 mils until they've sort of had time to soften up and sort of dissolve down. Now I use, as I say, my own mix, but you don't have to, with pellet, you don't have to use the branded pellets. You know, you go to your branded bait pellets, and they could be sort of £4 or £5 a kilo, you know, sometimes even more than that. Now those pellets are not doing anything more than, these are actually my own mix of Copans and Screttins pellet. Now Copans and Screttins pellet are what the majority of fish farms use to feed their fish, so they're really good pellet, and they're actually good for the fish. And I sell them well, it's £3.50 a kilo. So it's a fair bit cheaper than the main brand, and you can find quite a few makes of these. There's plenty of people out there that are selling pellet mixes for much cheaper than your main brand, who are probably using similar pellets anyway. Now the next thing I use is Boilies, and I'm on the this time round I'm on the CR Baits CR2 Boilies. I'm on a fish mill because the water temperature is nice and warm. The fish mills are breaking down nice, but I have also been fishing on the CR1s, which is a bird seed mix as well. So I like to bring a mixture of Boilies with me. It's just what I do. If I'm fishing 3 rods, I always like to fish 3 different baits on 3 different rods. Other people prefer to have the same bait on every rod. Again, it's just personal preference really. And then what I've done is I've brought just a selection of pop-ups and wafters with me. Now, I, like many anglers, am guilty of pretty much every time I go into a tackle shop, I buy a pot of wafters or a pot of, so I've probably got, you know, 50, 60 pots sat at home, different ones, and I used to bring them all with me every time. And the problem you get with that is it gives you too much choice, and sometimes you can just sit there and you've got your bait out, you haven't had a fish for a couple of hours, and you're like, oh, should I try something else? Should I, you know, a lot of the time it's best to just persevere with the baits that you've got, get the fish feed into those rather than keep swapping and changing baits. So what I tend to do now is, before I come, I select maybe 4 or 5 pots of pop-ups and wafters that I want to use for that session, and that's all I bring. So even if I am sat there second guessing my choices, there's nothing I can do about it because I haven't actually brought the other stuff with me. So with baiting wise, I tend to bait heavily with corn and pellet and very few boilies. So what I tend to do is, if I'm making a kilo mix up, I'll put 400 grams of pellet in, 400 grams of corn, and then 200 grams of boilies. So I'm using twice as much pellet and corn as I am boilies. Other people will use a different mix. You know, some people prefer putting boilies in. I just think boilies are the most expensive part of the bait. So if I can get away with using less, then it's better for my, you know, wallet. And it doesn't make it that expensive. Then you can make up a fairly decent mix. Now the other thing I always tend to do with the boilies, as well as I put very few whole boilies in my mix, I crush them, I half them. I tend to do that because I'm of the school of thought, and again, other people might disagree. I actually want the small. If I'm in a lake with smaller fish, I don't mind them coming in and on my bait, because I think that the smaller fish coming in lead the bigger fish in. So I always try to have a bit of bait that's good for the small fish, but then a bit that's not, that'll still be there when the carp do eventually move in. Other people will disagree, they don't want small fish in at all, but that's just my views. As I say, the best thing to do with baiting wise is, if you're in a, think about what's in the water. If you're in a small lake that's got 500 carp in it, then you can go through plenty of bait. If you're in a large lake that's got 50 carp in it, you probably don't need as much. But then again, the absolute best thing to do is contact if you're unsure, is contact the water that you're going to fish. Speak to the bailiffs. They'll always give you a hand, you know, and talk to them and see what sort of bait and how much bait they recommend. They know the water better than probably anybody else, so so that's probably the thing to do, really. But again, just a quick the other thing I use as well is like the syrups. Now again, syrups are you know, syrups and goos and things like that. My personal thing with them is, I think if there are fish in the area and you put goo or syrup on, it can lead to a quick bite. But I do feel that, you know, once the bait's been in the water, you know, half an hour to an hour, I'm not sure how much effect you're getting from the goos and the syrups anymore. Now I might be completely wrong. I've not done any scientific studies or anything like that on that, but that's just my feeling. So I just feel if you add a little bit of goo, a little bit of syrup or whatever, if there's fish in the area, it can lead to a quick bite. If there's not fish in the area, then you know, I don't know how effective it is really, but I just put a little bit of drizzle. I don't mix it into my mix. I keep all my mixes dry, and then when I put the mix out with the bait boat, I just pop a bit of you know, drizzle of syrup over the top of the bait. I use the bait boat. Again, you don't have to use a bait boat. I personally use the bait boat because I'm blind in one eye, and I find that I really struggle to work out distances when I'm casting, and I'm not very good with using the spod rods and things like that, again because I have arthritis as well. So casting a spod rod out, you know, quite a lot is painful for me. So I use the bait boat for that reason. But again, the best thing to do, as with most carp fishing, is try and error. You know, trial and error. Just go out, fish, put some bait out. If it doesn't work, next time you go, try something different. You know, talk to other anglers. Some anglers won't tell you anything. Other anglers will be more than happy to sit there and talk to you all day long about what they do. Again, if you're walking around the lake and you're talking to an angler and they're not that forthcoming with tips and that, don't force them. It's entirely, you know, don't keep on at them. It's entirely up to them, the way they fish and how interactive they want to be with people. But if you keep asking questions, you will find somebody that's more than happy to talk to you eventually. So so anyway, it's not the most entertaining of videos because there's not much to see in it, but that's my my take on baiting. Feel free to comment and let other people know how you bait or whatever. It's all good information. Thank you very much.